Good morning, everybody. Hey, the last couple weeks, Brandon's been sharing about some stuff in Exodus that is really building towards a climax today and what we're going to see. He's been talking about a concept. The last 2 weeks, we talked through, if you know the story, the 10 plagues of Egypt. And there was a guy, Pharaoh, who was kind of over the entire country, the king of the country. And God had called Moses to go to Pharaoh and said, hey, let these people go. Let the Israelite people leave. And Pharaoh said no. And as we dug through this, the further into the story we got, the more we ran into this concept of a hardened heart. Pharaoh hardened his heart towards the commands of God, and then ultimately God used that and hardened Pharaoh's heart. Y'all know what that feels like. We've been listening to this the last 2 weeks, but I wanted to hit you guys with that idea yourself so you can picture that. What does it feel like to have a hardened heart? Maybe you've been in a situation with a relationship where somebody just decided, I am done listening to you. You ever had that experience? You could not get them to open up. You couldn't get the walls to come down. It was over. Or maybe you've been in that spot where you're I just can't deal with this person anymore. Maybe it was a coworker. Maybe it was a classmate. Maybe it was a sibling or a spouse. But it seemed like no matter what was said or done, there was nothing that you were going to be able to do to break those walls down. It was set and it was done. And you were locked into this kind of a cycle. The cycle of a hardened heart can really trap us. Today we're going to see how that plays out. But we're going to see something much more than that today as we're looking in Exodus. We're going to see God take a people and do something with them that they could never do with themselves. And my hope is, my prayer has been, that by the end of this time today, we'll understand more how it is that God took us from our own place of hardened hearts, from our own places where we struggle to even listen to Him, we struggle to understand what God had for us, or maybe we didn't want to. How God can take us from that place to a place where we are transformed and we are free. Where we are free of the grasp of the brokenness of this world of sin and death, and we are set free. So I'm really looking forward to getting to share with you guys this morning. And so I want to ask you to do me a favor. If you have your Bibles, turn to Exodus chapter 14. If you don't have one, you can actually grab one of those in the seat in front of you, and you can look it up right there. In fact, you can keep that Bible if you want to take it home with you. We want everybody who comes to worship with us to have the Word, because we want to be able to know what it is that God has for us. Let me set the scene now as we're digging in there as we turn into Exodus 14. I just want to set the scene on where we're at. So last week, Brandon shared about the 10th plague, about the firstborn, how the people who had not put the blood of the lamb over their doorpost were ultimately, their firstborn son was killed. It was a tragic, terrible story, but the grace that covered over that was the blood that set these people different, that set them apart. And after that, Pharaoh said, just get out. All of you leave. And so 2 million people set out into the desert being guided by God. Now, I don't know that me saying that number makes that realistic to you, but I want you to picture something. Imagine 2 Albuquerques and Edgewood and Rio Rancho and all that stuff, picking up all of their stuff that they could carry and just moving out into the desert. Logistically, how does that look? It looks insane, right? The picture of that looks crazy, and that's the picture that we have here. We have millions of people wandering off into the desert, but they're not wandering. The picture that we have from Exodus is they were being guided by God, and God had placed a pillar of cloud in front of them to lead them forward, and then at night they could have a pillar of fire. They could see where it is that God was guiding them, and they would go out and they would camp. And into that, we pick up the story today. The people of Israel, the people that God has delivered from slavery, wandering out into the desert, being guided by this pillar, and then this happened. Exodus chapter 14, verse 1 through 5. Says this, then the Lord gave these instructions to Moses. Order the Israelites to turn back and camp at Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. Camp there along the shore, across from Baal-zephon. Then Pharaoh will think the Israelites are confused. They're trapped in the wilderness. And once again, I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase after you. I've planned this in order to display my glory through Pharaoh and his whole army. And after this, the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites camped there as they were told. All right, so this is the picture. And there's some pretty deep theology here, but this is the picture. The Israelites start to go out into the wilderness, and we actually learned just before this that God said, I'm not going to take you on the straight path The straight path would have gone directly from basically what is Cairo today to what is, well, Gaza today, and it would have gone right along the Mediterranean coast. But instead of doing that, I'm going to guide you guys out into the desert. You're going to go southeast. You're going to go down towards what is the Red Sea, and you're going to wander out there into the desert, and I'm going to take you this direction. And so the people, having been slaves for hundreds of years, didn't know any different, and they started to follow God as God had called them to do. And as they got out into the desert, it says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. He's going to harden his heart. Pharaoh heard that the Israelites were out there, and he decided, let's go get them back. I want them back for myself. I want them for me. I want my slaves back. I want my economy back. I want all of these things back. And he forgot everything that he had already seen God do. Now, the picture that we have here, and this is the picture I want you guys to imagine today, is this. Pharaoh had come to a place where his heart was so hard, God was going to use his dark heart to free these people. Any of you guys struggle with all of the evil and brokenness that we see around us in this world today? Any of you struggle with this picture? And if God really is working, if God really is powerful, if God really is good, why do we have this stuff happening? We find ourselves having these conversations, and many of us are afraid to even bring it up because we feel like that means that we're questioning God. The reality is, as we talked about here a few weeks ago, if you read throughout Scripture, if you read the Psalms, you see over and over and over again people like David saying, God, I don't understand why this is happening. Right now, we're going to see a why. You see, God uses people who are seeking Him to do amazing things. But even when people aren't, God still ultimately uses them to bring Him glory. I have a passage I want to share with you guys this morning to explain this. And it comes actually out of the New Testament. It's out of Romans chapter 1, verse 24 through 25, and it says this. So God abandoned them to do whatever shameful things their hearts desired. This is talking about people who decided they don't want to follow God. As a result, they did vile and degrading things with each other's bodies. They traded the truth about God for a lie. They worshiped and served the things that God had created instead of the Creator Himself, who was worthy of eternal praise. Amen. What Paul says is this: God gave them over to the things that they wanted. There comes a point, and this is a scary point for me, but there comes a point when sometimes God will give us exactly what it is that we want. Where He will allow us to have exactly what it is that our flesh desires, where He's going to say, okay, if that's what you want, if that's what it is that you're desiring, if that's what it is that you think that you need, I'm going to let you have it. But this is ultimately, if I let you have this thing, this is how it's going to end up for you. You see, God created us to live in relationship with Him, to walk in a way where He is setting our standard, where He is the one setting our life, and not because He wants to keep us away from good, but because He desires good for us. But there comes a point when God says, okay, that's fine. If that's the direction you're going to go, I'm going to let you have it. Understand, if I let you have this, this is going to take you to places that are going to destroy you. And what we see with Pharaoh, when it says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart, He said, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart so that I can show my glory to the Israelites through what it is that Pharaoh is doing. Pharaoh keeps saying, I want to be in control. I want these people for myself. I want to dominate them. I'm going to have this, and I'm going to do everything I can to take it. And God says, fine. If you want to be that selfish, I'm going to let you have it. But if you do, it's going to destroy you. That understanding, as we dig into this today, as we keep going to this today, is a really important one for us. Because oftentimes we all feel this friction between what it is that our flesh wants and what it is that we've heard that God desires for us. The challenge that we have in this today is understanding that God's ways for us are not meant to be cruel. They're actually meant to set us free, as He's about to do with the Israelites. And we see this in Exodus chapter 14, verse 9, the story of what happens with Pharaoh here. Going on a little bit further, Pharaoh got his army together, and we get this. The Egyptians chased after them with all the forces of Pharaoh's army. All of his horses, chariots, his charioteers, his troops. The Egyptians caught up with the people of Israel as they camped on the side of the shore by Pi-hahiroth, across from Baal-zephon. So Pharaoh heard that the Israelites were out there in the desert. He assumed that they were out there lost and stupid and confused. And so he chased them down, and he sought them with his chariots and his horses and his troops, and he found them stuck on the side of the water. Let me paint a little geography lesson for you. You can picture this if you want to. The Israelites had wandered south into the desert. In Egypt, when you go southeast from Cairo, you end up quickly back in the Sahara Desert. Not a lot of water in the Sahara. Not a lot of grass, not a lot of trees, just heat and sand. And as you go far enough to the southeast, you run into a shoreline, a beach. And the Israelites had been guided by God to this beach. And when Pharaoh figured out where they were, he took his army, realizing, I have these people trapped. I can take them back with me to be slaves, or I can kill the ones who have caused problems, but they're all going to be mine. For the Israelites in this moment, I want you to picture this. You hear that Pharaoh is coming. He has been dominant over you for centuries. You hear that he's coming with chariots and horses and troops. You've never fought a battle in your life. The Israelites actually turned to Moses, and we're not going to read this here, but they turned to Moses and they say, were there not enough graves back in Egypt? We could have just stayed there. It would have been better for us than this. They see the chariots, and we think of chariots today, and we think, whatever. It's like Ben-Hur, it's just a little horsey rabbit, going around here with this thing. A chariot was like a tank. You had no weapons. Pharaoh has all of the upper hand. And this is where we run into how this looks to the Israelites and why this is such an important passage. As Pharaoh approached, the people looked up and panicked when they saw the Egyptians overtaking them. They cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, why did you bring us out here into the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves in Egypt? What have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you that this would happen when we were all still in Egypt? We said, leave us alone. Let us be slaves. It's better to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in the wilderness. For the Israelite people, and this is true for many of us today, if you're a follower of Jesus in this room, I can almost guarantee you've run into this moment when, even though you had seen God do good things, you found yourself saying life was easier before. Life was easier before when I could just kind of do what I wanted to do, and I had this thing that gave me comfort. The Israelites made it sound like Egypt was so great. They're going to talk about it later on, like back when we were slaves in Egypt, we had pots of meat that we got to sit around and eat from. It's a lie. But for the people here, they find themselves looking at this thing coming at them now, and because of their fear, they find themselves questioning God. They find themselves questioning their purpose, and they find themselves wishing, I wish I could just go back to the place that I was before, when I could just find comfort in something that I had right in front of me. Even though they had heard and seen God work, the Israelites were still terrified when the world turned against them. When everything turned against them, they found themselves in terror. And this is where we run into God showing up. Look at verse 13 and 14. If you have your Bibles, look at this. You're going to want to underline this if you have a pen or a highlighter, because this is fantastic stuff. But Moses told the people, don't be afraid. Just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. 80 times. 80 times in the Bible. 80 times in this book. Some variation of do not be afraid is listed in the Bible. 80 different times. Why do we have to have it placed 80 different times in the Bible? Because we're afraid. Because we easily fall into fear. Now, some of you guys, maybe some of you aren't that way, right? Some of you guys are strong. You don't worry about much. You're like, I got this, man. I'm good, right? I wish I was that guy. Honestly, in our relationship, my wife is that guy. I'm the one who's afraid, and she's like, "What are you so worried about?" It's probably pretty fair, right? I'm the worrier. She's not so much. I am the worrier. So I find comfort in the fact that 80 different times in the Bible, God has to say, stop being afraid because we're too stupid to hear it the first time. 80 different times he has to say this because our natural fleshly tendency, our battle is to look at the circumstance right in front of us and say, this is too big, I can't handle it anymore. And we get to the place where we are locked in. Fear is not something that God places in us, but this is the most important part about fear. Fear, when it happens so that we will take our eyes off of ourselves and look to God. Faith is not the absence of fear. Faith is taking your fear to God. What Moses told the Israelites to do is to stand still and watch. Do not be afraid. God's going to show you something in this today. Our faith grows in the hard times, but we have to watch. So like I said, I'm a natural worrier. You would think that technology would make that easier because we have the semblance or the illusion of control, but we don't. When you're a parent and your kids are young, you worry just because you don't know if they're going to live through the night. And any of you guys, raise your hand if you, as a parent, at one point in time, or at least once, walked into the room with your baby and thought, that child's not breathing. Some of us actually had that experience, right, where you did that. But your kids get older, and then you send them off to school, and then like the fire trucks go by, and you think to yourself, something happened at the school. Right? And then they get older and they go off on their bike and they ride into the neighborhood and they go and you start to think, this isn't going to happen. I don't know what's going on. And then they stay out too late one night once they get to high school, right? And you're wondering what's going on. And that fear is there. And it's not because you're mad at them because you just think they're being idiots. You're afraid of look, nothing good in Albuquerque happens after 7 o'clock in the morning. But no, like happens after 11, right? And so you have that fear. And then your kids grow up and they move out, and you no longer even have that semblance of control. Right? My kids, when we have phone stuff, and we know where each other are until they get out of the house, and then they're adults. You no longer have the illusion of control. And when you try to call your child, and your child doesn't answer, and you start to think, I have a daughter at New Mexico State, and if she doesn't respond to the text, my first thought is, there are the cartels and the traffickers. I never had control in the first place. I never had control in the first place. I had the illusion. But the reality is, we've said this before, every person in this room is one phone call away from your entire world blowing up. We don't have this control that we think that we have. The Israelites never had control. They never had the power to get themselves out of Egypt. They didn't have that power to do that stuff. They did not have the power to deliver themselves. When the Egyptians wanted to, they could kill them. And so as they complain because of their fear, as they take their eyes off of God because of their fear, as they do these things, what is happening is they're grasping for something that they never had in the first place. And I love what God, through Moses, tells the people. He doesn't tell them, stop being idiots. He says, just watch. What happens with fear, when it's well-founded, when God uses it, is when we take our eyes off of the thing that is making us afraid, and we turn our eyes to Him. I talk about my kids now as their adults, and I am no longer the controller, but I am now the counselor. When these things happen, my only retort, and it should have been the one in the first place, is to look to God and say, God, I know you love that person more than I do. I trust you. In this window, in this moment, the Israelites looked and they saw this army coming, and then God did something that they never could have expected. Look at verse 21. Then Moses raised his hand over the sea, and the Lord opened up a path through the water with a strong east wind. The wind blew all night, turning the seabed into dry land. So the people of Israel walked through the middle of the sea on dry ground, the walls of water on each side. Then the Egyptians, all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and charioteers, chased them into the middle of the sea. But just before dawn, the Lord looked down on the Egyptian army from the pillar of fire and cloud, and he threw their forces into total confusion. He twisted their chariot wheels, making the chariots difficult to drive. Let's get out of here, away from the Israelites, the Egyptians shouted. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt. If you've grown up in church, you've heard this story. This is that story. 2 million people on a seabed, on the ocean, on the shoreline. Walls of water, right? If you're old enough to picture Charlton Heston and the staff, that's the picture here, right? For those of you guys who look back at the 1900s and realize how old that is, there's an old movie from way back in the day. But the picture is the seashore, the sea opening up and walking like a hall through the middle of this water. All of these people going through on dry ground. I picture that today. And I think about that, and it blows my mind. I don't know what I would have been like. I know there probably would have been a lot of people who would have walked through, afraid that the water's going to crash back down on any second. There would have been some of us, because of my curiosity, I probably would have been like, boop, The sad part went boop, and that would have been a problem. But you're walking through this thing, and you picture this happening, and you realize, I'm experiencing something that no other person in the history of the creation has ever got to experience. When we follow God, when we say, okay, you are the creator of the universe, God, I trust you more than I trust my own understanding. Trust the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. When we trust God, we end up getting to experience things that no one else got to experience. In following God, the people were able to experience life in a way that no one else ever had. How did God set these people free? By taking them through the middle of a sea, by taking them through the water to life on the other side. There's so much we're going to talk about here in just a minute, but I want you to understand something. The story of the Israelites here is not just a story for them. God set them free in the same way that we're going to say here in just a second, he sets us free. But the part of the story here as we finish this part, it breaks my heart, but also is just the reality. Is Pharaoh and his guys and everybody else tried to follow as well on their own strength because of their hardened hearts. And Brandon said this a couple weeks ago. There is a gravestone right in the middle of the seabed saying Pharaoh died of a hardened heart. Not literally, but there is a group of people down at the bottom of the water who, because of their hardened hearts, refused to believe that God was working, and ultimately ended up today going down into the water, finding their chariot wheels locking up, finding themselves standing against God, and ultimately saying, get out of here, we can't do this. I want you to picture something now. It says they went through that night, and as the sun was coming up, the water started to close back in. It closed back in on the Egyptians. But I want you to picture, as the sun is coming up, right behind you, and you look back out where the water had been separated, and it's now closed back up, and you realize the thing that had enslaved you your entire life is now underneath that water, and it's gone. What must that have felt like? To look out and you see out in front of you this openness, this emptiness, where once, just hours earlier, had stood the army that was either going to enslave you or kill you. You are now completely free. What must that have felt like? The Israelites, for the first time in their lives, realized that they were truly free. They had been set free from the thing that had enslaved them. And so my hope today is that we understand something. Here's my bottom line to carry this with us. Our present circumstances do not limit the power of God. God delivered these people from something that they never could have delivered themselves from. And if you are a follower of Jesus this morning, you're in that boat where you are looking and you feel like life is coming at you and there is no hope for you. I want you to understand something. Based on the temporal story of this right here, God's not done just because things are too big for you to handle. There is a lie that people say is in the Bible that is not, that God will not give you something too big for you to handle. That's a lie. The truth of the matter is, there are times when the circumstances that you are in are way too big for you, and there's nothing that you can do to deliver yourself. But you know who is bigger than those circumstances? The one that made it, the one that made this universe. Those circumstances will allow you to have faith to trust Him. Too often, we allow our circumstances to shut us down. But God is not done just because there's an ocean in front of you and an army behind you. God can open doors where nothing else could be opened. So this morning, I want to ask you to do a couple things. I want to ask you to journal about the times in your life when you've had a hardened heart, where the circumstances or your life have called you have brought you to a place where you found yourself saying, no, God, I don't want your things for me. I don't want to follow you. I want to do my own thing. If you're here today, I really believe that you're here because you want to know what God has for you. But if we're being honest, I know some of us, even in this room right now, find ourselves with hearts that don't want to change. Because of the circumstances that we've seen, because of the things that we've experienced, because of the fact that on our own we are dead inside. We have hardened ourselves to God. What if today is the day that we finally let go of those things and start to listen? In your heart, I want you to pray and ask, is it time to just stand still? To look at God, to look to His ways, to look and to say, I'm afraid, but I trust you. I'm scared about the way that this world is going, but I trust you. I'm just going to watch you do something great. And the last thing, and the most important thing, I want to sit in this here for a minute or two. I just want to ask you how you can example this for others. This first part is for those of you who are followers of Jesus. If you have died to yourself and given your life to Jesus, this is the moment of reminder of the fact that you are standing on the other side of that water set free. And if you are standing on the other side of that water set free from the things that enslave you, it is time to start exempling peace to the people around you. To start showing people that it doesn't have to be the way that it is. To start praying for your coworkers. To start lifting them up. To start looking at the people around you. Usually God has placed somebody in your life that you don't even know why, but that person's always on your mind as somebody that needs to hear the truth. It's time to start praying specifically for that person. To start showing that person that there's a better way. Maybe inviting that person to church. Maybe going up to that person and saying, I just want you to know that there's something more than this. But if you are in this room today and you're still on the other side of that water, if you are one of those people today. I know that we have people in this room that are in that place, that is standing on the water and they feel the army behind them, and you haven't said, I just want what you have for me, God. I want the salvation that comes in Christ to be my entire hope. The main reason we have this story in the Bible isn't to hear about the cool water on the wall, on the sides, and walking through the middle of it. This story comes up over and over and over again. In fact, the Bible tells us that the picture of the Israelites going through the water and coming out saved is the picture that we have as Christians. That picture of baptism, we have water here today. It's not really warm, but it could be today for you. The picture of baptism is a picture of I am standing outside the water and I am going to be a slave. I am standing outside of the water, and if I stay here, I am dead. I am standing outside of the water, and if I stay here in this place where I don't trust God and I'm just going to trust myself and I'm just going to do this and I'm going to try harder and I'm going to be better and I'm going to be good and I'm going to hold my family together, I'm going to do this. I don't need God because I got me. If I stay in that place, what I have today is all I'm ever going to have. But the picture of baptism is a picture of I believe that Jesus died for me. I believe that he died so that I can be free. I'm going to confess with my mouth that he is Lord. I believe that he is alive and raised from the dead, and I will now go through the water. I'm going to go through the water of dying to myself. The old life on that side of the desert I don't want anymore. I want this new life on the other side. And if you're in that place today, or I just want to be alive, I just want to follow God with what I got, I don't want to be afraid anymore, why not today? Why not today be the day where you get to picture dying to yourself and standing on the other side, set free from everything that this world wants to throw at you? Because Jesus came to set us free from sin and death, so that when I stand before Jesus when he comes back, I will be free because of his work. I want that for you. So I want to pray now. And after I pray, Tate's going to come up. We're going to talk about communion. But in this time, I'm going to be in the back, and there will be some others as well. If you want to talk about baptism, we're actually going to have a baptism this morning. Maybe today is the day for you. Let's have that conversation and see what God has for us. Let me pray with you guys.